I've made them, you've made them, we've all made them. I want to go through 10 amateur filmmaking mistakes and how you can avoid them. These aren't really in any particular order, so yeah, let's just jump into it. Number one, how many times have you been recording, you're getting the shot that you want, and you press the button again to end record, and then something happens that you really wish you would have captured? Or you just simply kind of press record, get your shot that you think you need, you're in post, and you're like, I wish I would have just held that shot just a little bit longer. Tip number one is extend that shot. If you are shooting any kind of B-roll, try to shoot for at least 5 to 10 seconds longer than what you kind of think you should be shooting. Just extend that shot a little bit longer, just in case something extra happens or something unexpected happens that you'd want to have recorded. Number two is you're shooting on a manual lens, you're doing a sit-down interview, you could be shooting anything really. And again, you go in post and you see you have absolutely missed focus on your whole interview. This has happened to me more times than I would like to admit. And just the simple solution is to double check your focus. A few things that you can add: focus peaking, and then if you have a monitor is super helpful, just bigger than that little flip out LCD screen that will help you nail focus. And lastly, just pinching in and zooming in, just 100%, make sure that you are in focus. So kind of staying on that theme of focus, another giveaway for kind of showing that your film is shot by an amateur is having that autofocus hunting in the middle of your shot. Nothing kind of screams amateur more than being able to see that. So again, a couple things that you can do to fix that. One, just reshoot your shot. If you notice that your autofocus was hunting, then again, shoot it again. It's no problem. Again, depending on what your project is. If you have that chance to go and reshoot it, reshoot it. Another way is to use manual focus lenses and to be able to rack the focus yourself. Then there's no mistake other than what's on you, and you won't get that autofocus hunting. Although that might make it a little harder for you to nail focus every time. Also, going back to the first tip, if you've taken a longer cut, there's always just the option, if you see that little focus hunting section in your clip, you can just take whatever is after that for your B-roll. Just edit it out. Whatever you do, just don't include autofocus hunting in your final video. Number three, make sure you've got all your gear. Again, pretty much all of these are super embarrassing to admit that I've actually messed up on every single one of these. But number three is just make sure that you've got all your gear. I have been just notorious in the past for forgetting things, and I've had to make sure that I have a list and I check it twice. I call this the Santa Claus rule. Just make sure that you have that list before your shoot so that when you are leaving, packing up everything, and you're in a bit of that rush, you can go back to your list and double check everything. I have forgotten SD cards, tripods, mic cables, headphones. I mean, the list kind of goes on, which is why I now make a list. In addition to double checking your gear and what you're bring extra batteries and SD cards. There could be a time where an SD card fails, and if that's the only one you've got, you're kind of out of luck. And same thing with batteries. There's times where batteries don't last as long as you might have thought. Just having backup of batteries and SD cards is kind of a must. Number four is kind of a reiteration of everything, but it's just simply double check. Double check everything. Double check your focus. Double check that you have your gear. Double check that you have your scripts, your storyboard, everything that you need to make this successful. Just double check everything. Once you've shot something, double check that you shot it the way that you actually wanted to shoot it. Just double check everything. Number five is actually have a contract. You know, thankfully, I actually haven't had a situation where I've been burned by a client, and I've definitely not burned a client before. but I know of a ton of friends and others in the industry that have been burned by clients and they didn't have a contract. That's ultimately what really hurt them. They weren't able to fall back on anything. And not only just if a client burns you, but also just checking back on deliverables, having something in writing that you have both agreed upon of, okay, what am I shooting? How long is this supposed to be? How many photos? How many videos am I making? When's everything due? So that everybody is on the same page, literally, and they know what to expect and when to expect it. If you don't have a contract, again, it can lack professionality, but then also just this is what can save your butt if something goes wrong or there's issues when it comes to deliverables. Number 6, again, hate to admit this one, but I did not do this for the longest time, and that is backing up your files. Thankfully, this hasn't happened with anything important for me, but I've had hard drives fail. And when that hard drive fails and you can't get your stuff back, that's kind of it. And so if you have client work on there, having to explain that to a client is the worst. So if you have stuff backed up and one drive fails, you're always good to go. And you don't have to kind of go through that embarrassment of explaining to a client that you've actually just lost everything that you just shot. So make sure to back up your stuff, not only for clients, but also just for your own personal stuff too. If there's passion projects you've made, taking pictures of friends, family, you want to be able to hold on to that stuff. Computers aren't perfect. Hard drives aren't perfect. Just make sure to back up your projects. Number 7 is all about lighting. And this will kind of come into a couple different scenarios. One telltale sign for an amateur looking interview setup is that you're shooting on the lit side of your face. Shooting on the shadow side of the face just adds more depth, more contrast, more character to your subject. Now, when it comes to an interview as well, I think you should know how to quickly light and set up your interview. Nothing screams amateur like not knowing really how to set it up. There's so many situations where I'm the one, because it's kind of, a one-man band, I'm the one who decides how to shoot, how to light, how to set up the audio in an interview scene. And the people that have hired me to shoot this are expecting that. And so I'm the one who comes in and sets it up. Or you might be in a situation where you've had something go wrong in your shoot, and you now have to be the one to be able to fix it quickly. Hey, let's just move this light over here, or this light failed, we got to move it towards the window, or there can be countless ways. You not only look like a pro, but you get to save the day. So just make sure that you know how to set up an interview, you know how to set something up from scratch, and when something goes wrong, you'll know how to fix it as well, just because you know the fundamentals of how to light a scene, how to light an interview. So not only with an interview, but just kind of in general, make sure that you are shooting from the shadow side to, again, give your character depth and contrast, and backlighting helps out incredibly as well. So even when you're shooting documentary style, just try to make sure that your shots are all backlit. To, again, just make your shots more dynamic. If everything is just front lit, everything will just look very flat and won't have that depth. That makes a good looking shot a good looking shot. 2 other points about lighting. Don't just shoot at whatever time. Actually, go and plan out your shoots. If your scene calls for noonday lighting, okay. But for the most part, you want to optimize how you're shooting and when you're shooting, where your light is coming from. And even though you can't control the sun, you can control when you shoot and where the sun is going to be. So again, if you want your video, your film to be professional looking, don't just randomly pick whatever time to shoot and, again, end up shooting something that looks blown out or flat. Make sure you're shooting backlit, shadow side, and choosing the right times of day that are gonna create the most effective shots for the story and for the imagery. Number 8 is focusing on your shutter speed and your frame rate. So with cinema cameras, it's great because you can shoot at a 180-degree rule. So just kind of doubling your frame rate and your shutter speed. Your shutter speed is double your frame rate. So if you are shooting at 24 frames per second, then your shutter speed is going to be at 48, or some cameras can only do 50. But you want to make sure that you are using that 180-degree rule. It's just kind of a giveaway if either of those are off. Another thing I'll say just about frame rates, I know that 60 frames per second seems to be popular on social media, and it's a frame rate that you can use to slow down and get a little bit of slow-mo, but don't just shoot 60 frames per second just because you can shoot 60 frames per second. Back when the 120 frames per second slow-mo craze was going on, everybody just shot, including me, in 120 frames per second because I just thought everything looked epic in slow-mo. But it made no sense for the story. It made no sense for what I was trying to tell. So again, make sure you're being intentional with everything that you're doing, why your aperture is the way that it is. Do you need a super shallow depth of field, or do you want to be able to see kind of everything and everyone in your frame? Do you want to have slow motion, or do you not? Don't just shoot a particular way because it's trendy. Have intentionality behind every way that you shoot. And again, make sure that if you're shooting in 60 frames per second, it is for a specific reason. And usually that'll either be for the fact that you can slow it down in post, or to get a higher shutter speed in sports or in action sports. Again, you don't want to just shoot an interview in 60 frames per second because it'll just give it that weird 60 frames per second look compared to what your eye kind of naturally sees at 24 frames per second. So again, just make sure that you're doing everything with intentionality and there's a reason why you're choosing the specs. Number 9 is bad audio. Again, another telltale sign of an amateur film is just having really crappy audio. So unfortunately, this means that you should, if you're taking filmmaking seriously, you're investing in gear. And a mic is one of the greatest things that you can invest in. But not only having a good mic, but knowing how to set that up, how to use it properly, and making sure in windy situations that you have a dead cat or some kind of windscreen to be eliminating that wind. I know I've showed up to interviews before not expecting it to be so windy, and it just killed my shoot. The wind was so bad, I didn't have any kind of windscreen or dead cat for my mic, so it just sounded terrible, and it was something that I had to go back and reshoot or try and figure out in post how to actually make it work. Another dead giveaway with audio is just having a massive echo. When you're choosing different scenes and you have the ability to choose, make sure you're choosing a room that doesn't have a huge echo. It doesn't have noise going on in the background. You want to make sure that you've got nice, clean audio. Another telltale sign for an amateur filmmaker is that bad audio is not just the audio itself or the mic, but where you recorded it and how you recorded it. So you want to choose a location that's going to have a robust sounding interview, something that is going to sound clean and crisp and not like you're in a massive hall or a buzzing in the background or anything like that. That's going to be distracting for everybody and their mother that watches it. Number 10, the tip is just take your time. There's been so many situations I've come into where I thought I could just kind of wing it. The further I get in my filmmaking career, the more I realize how much time I need to be putting into every step of creating a film or a video. Anytime I just kind of think I can wing it, or if I'm rushing things, it never really works out. There's been times where I've gotten lucky, but overall, the more time I take, the more intentionality I put into absolutely every step of the process, the better the film turns out. I think it goes that way with everything in life. Make sure you plan out what you're shooting, why you're shooting it. Is it a tight shot? Is it a wide shot? Where's the light going to be? What's going to go into every little scene that you're creating or recording? Even if this is a documentary and there's so many things that are up in the air, You want to be able to figure out what things can you plan, what things can you predict and figure out and be ready for. Just make sure you take your time and you're methodical about everything. Those are my 10. I know it kind of went back and forth between mistakes and solutions, but I don't know, you'll get the point, hopefully. But let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if there's something that you've messed up in and you want us to hear about it, to learn from it. Let me know if you've fallen prey to any of these. I would love to hear from you. And as always, I'll see you on the next video. How many times have you hit record and you're getting the shot that you wanted to get, everything's going great, and then it starts raining and then ruins your audio?